Hey, how's it going everyone? It's Ryan here with another video for you today, and this is the one that it compares the 24mm pancake lens to the 50mm nifty 50 camera lens on a APS-C crop sensor camera such as my Canon SL2. There is a substantial difference between the two lenses on this camera. There's a substantial difference between the two lenses on a full frame camera, but on a crop sensor camera, I feel like it's a little bit more necessary for this video to be made because crop sensor cameras just aren't as popular as full frame cameras, so there's not quite as much out there for it as a full frame camera. Anyways, we'll just jump into this video. I'll be comparing picture quality and differences in pictures, differences in video, and then just general differences between the two lenses. We're gonna start with the difference in pictures. Now, just keep in mind, I took these pictures for the purpose of this video. They are by no means supposed to be like really good quality pictures or anything. They're just to show the differences between the two lenses. I'm not putting a whole lot of time setting these up or whatever. They're just here so that way I can share information. So starting off with the 24mm lens, I took a picture of this gin bottle I had because, I mean, it's a pretty bottle or whatever. I mean, it's not mine, so don't think anything of it. It's just for the purpose of the picture. So you can see that most stuff in the background of the 24mm lens is fairly well blurred out. And just take a good long look at the composition of the picture. I wanted these images to look similar. They're not gonna look exactly the same. Just take a good look, most importantly at the bokeh, which is the blurriness of the background, and then also look at the composition of the background. Now, when we look at the image in respects to the 50mm lens, now take a look. Again, the bottle is slightly further back than what it would have been for the 24mm lens, but take a look at how much more the background is blurred, and heck, even the foreground is blurred some on this image. And again, I tried to get the bottle placement to look fairly similar, but it's not going to be 100% because they are different lenses. Going back to the 24mm picture, you cannot see the chair behind it, but going to the 50mm image, you can see the chair behind it. Now keep in mind, I did not move the tripod along with my camera at all. All I did was merely move the bottle to fit within the image and try to look similar. The next comparison is the field of view. The first field of view image, just of the swing set in my backyard, I just tried to completely fill it up in the frame for the 50mm lens. Just take a good long look at it. That swing set is filling up the entire frame just about. I did not move my tripod or camera at all. So look at the next image. This is the 24mm image on the exact same spot as the 50mm. You can see the field of view is much larger. You can almost see my entire backyard. Not quite, but almost. That'll put it in perspective for you that if you want to do landscape pictures, definitely do not use the 50mm lens if you have an APS-C camera. Try to stick to the 24mm or lower lenses. So the next comparison that I want to show y'all is the focal length comparison. Again, I left the tripod and camera in the exact same spot. The only thing that I moved in the image was myself, so that way I would fit in the image better. And just keep in mind, again, I'm not trying to make these pictures look pretty or anything. I just took some quick pictures so that way I could get a quick comparison to be able to show in this video. The 24mm picture is okay. The 50mm picture, not so much. So just keep in mind, I only took these pictures for the purpose of comparisons, and that's all. So this image is the 24mm image. I'm probably only standing like 4, maybe 5 feet away from the camera. I fit in there well. You can see plenty of the background, though it is kind of washed out, but again, that's not the purpose of the video. This is the 50mm image. Notice I had to step further away from my camera, so now I'm standing in direct sunlight. That's why the shadow is really harsh, but again, not the point. The point is, I had to stand about 10 to 12 feet away from my camera for this picture, which again put me in direct sunlight, causing the ugly shadows. But also notice that in the background, you see so much less of my backyard than you did in the 24mm picture. So again, here's the 24mm picture. Just take a good long look. Pause the video if you need to, you know, just take everything in. And then here's the 50mm image. Notice the difference. Again, you will have to be further away with the 50mm lens in general, but even more so on the APS-C crop sensor cameras. And that's about it for pictures. Let's move on to the differences between these two lenses in videos. As I've said in both the 24mm video and the 50mm video, the 24mm lens is definitely more for vlogging than the 50mm lens. Now, you still don't have image stabilization on there, but you can make it do. It won't be as smooth and nice looking, but you can make it work. The 50mm lens, in my opinion, if you use it for any video, should be kept to B-roll. Because of the bokeh and its very smooth looking images and video, you should just use it for B-roll. You really can't use it for vlogging because it's just gonna be right in your face if you just hold it arm's width away. And in my opinion, you would have to be a little too far away from the camera for the audio to be fine. If you have a microphone mounted on top of the audio or on top of the camera, it might still be fine. I don't know. That might be where you just need to have like maybe a shotgun, like a little bit better shotgun mic than what I have, or just like a little lapel mic or something. But even just for general recording, like if you got a friend that's skateboarding or whatever, or you're just trying to make a little video, the 50mm lens could work. You just will have to be a little bit further away and just have to be aware of audio issues. So now for video comparison, I will show the difference between the two lenses on bokeh, because the bokeh on video is a little bit different than the bokeh on photographs. And then I will also show the difference between focus draw. You will notice that on the 50mm lens, you know, obviously things start out a lot blurrier than the 24mm lens, and then it also gives a unique look to the background whenever you do get your foreground or your subject in focus. So let's check it out. Okay, so now I'm showing you some video using the 50mm lens in my room. I don't know how the audio is because my camera is about 5 to 6 feet away from me, so I am trying to speak a little louder to compensate, just so that way you know. This is about how far away my camera normally is, and I'm like filling up the entire frame. So that is a big, huge difference between the 50mm lens and the 24mm lens while recording. So let's just go ahead and change back to the 24mm lens. Okay, so now I got my 24mm lens back on there, and it's just like just outside of arm's reach. So now it's just like 2 feet away instead of like, well, 2 or 3 feet away instead of like 5 or 6. So it basically cuts the distance in half. And as you can see a lot more of my desk and everything behind me. The one advantage that the 50mm lens has on video recording is the fact that because it's 1.8 aperture instead of a 2.8, it allows for a lot more light. So right now on the settings I have, recording at 24 frames per second and having a shutter speed of 50, I have to have my ISO at 400. Whereas on the 50mm lens at 24 frames per second with a shutter speed of 50, I had my ISO at 100. And it might have been slightly darker, but not much. That much bigger aperture allows a lot more light to come in, so that way you don't have to have as much film or like grain in your videos and stuff, so it looks a lot cleaner. So because of that, I would highly recommend using a 50mm lens for like if you're doing B-roll or something, and then using a 24mm lens for regular videos like what I'm doing right now. So as you can see in the following videos, the 24mm lens is not as blurry as the 50mm lens, and even in the background, so the bokeh is still better on the 50mm lens for video, and that's what you would kind of expect. And again, in my opinion, stuff like B-roll or whatever, the 50mm lens is much better because it gives a little bit more unique looks to the video. So now just some general differences. For weight, even though this one, the 50mm lens, is bigger, it's not much heavier than the 24mm lens. And I think the reason for that is because of the build quality. They both have metal plates on the parts that you mount to the camera, so it's real good. But the 50mm lens just feels a little bit more plasticky than the 24mm lens. The 24mm lens seems to be a little bit more solid than the 50mm lens. Like if I kind of jiggle around the 50mm lens, it kind of feels like there's some shake and wobble in there, whereas I do that with the 24mm lens, it's not as much, but I do think that's because 50mm lens has a little bit more glass in there. But it still feels like the 24mm lens is made a little bit better than the 50mm lens. Now, these both cost about the same. You're gonna be looking somewhere between $120 $150 for either one of these. Really, my only complaints with both of these lenses, and that's because of the cost, is one, the focus ring is like right on the freaking end, more so than the on the 24mm lens and the 50mm lens. Also, you have to be careful about using the focus rings and make sure that it is on manual focus, because I've heard that you can really screw up the autofocus if you use the focus rings while you have it on autofocus. So be sure to turn that switch to manual focus. Also, the only complaint that I have about these lenses, and that's purely based on the cost, is there's no image stabilization. So you do got to be careful with video and even taking pictures if your shutter speed is a little slower. But that's because these lenses are $120 to $150, whereas I saw that the 24mm lens that does have image stabilization, I think was like $400 $500. So you're paying a lot more just to get image stabilization, which is crazy, but and also a little bit better build quality as well, I suppose, like weatherproofing and stuff like that. But it's really my only two complaints between these two lenses. The autofocus on the 24mm lens is better, in my opinion, than the 50mm lens. I feel like the 24mm lens does focus on stuff a little bit quicker, and more importantly, silently. Like, it makes a little bit of noise when the 24mm lens focuses in on something, but this thing, when it is focusing on something, good God, you better have a freaking external mic on your camera, or else it's gonna be picking up every little when it focuses. I would say that this 50mm lens, especially on the APS-C crop sensor camera, is better suited for photography. I think that's kind of in general for full frame as well, but you can definitely make it work a little bit better for video on full frame than a crop sensor camera. So I would definitely more use this for photography, but occasionally B-roll for certain videos. Whereas the 24mm lens, it's great for photography as well. You really have to get close to your subject in photography, and also in making videos as well, but that's not as much of an issue, especially if you're vlogging. But I do feel like this build quality is a little bit better. The images, they're both great on both lenses, so I really can't complain. And in my opinion, it's great to have both of these lenses in your kit, especially if you're starting off, because they're so cheap. And because I mean, you ain't paying no $700 for either of these lenses. I got both of these for just like $330, including tax, so not a lot. Now, I will have both of those lenses and all my other equipment that I use to make my videos linked down below in the description. The links go to Amazon, so if you want to check those out or whatever, feel free to click on them. You never know when Amazon will be running a deal on them and having a discount or whatever. So again, just check it out. But if you thought that my video has been informative and helpful, please be sure to leave a like on it. That'll really help me out. Also, be sure to comment whether you think the 50mm lens or 24mm lens is better. And also, if you have anything else to add to my video that I may have missed, feel free to let me know down in the comment section. If you really enjoy my content, just please click that subscribe button and be sure that notifications are turned on, because YouTube likes to not notify people if you don't specify it well enough, which is kind of annoying. But anyways, I hope that y'all have a great day. I hope my video has been helpful, and I will see y'all next time.